And welcome, and it's good to be with you all this afternoon. Thank you very much. So my situation is I was all on campus, ready to go, and we had outages from the internet on campus. And I figured I'd go home and would work from there, but internet is also out there. So I had to call around, find a coffee shop that had internet. And so I'm joining you from a coffee shop. And as Nancy said, bless the coffee shops. But the problem is there's a lot of background noise, and I know that is not ideal. And so I apologize for the din and all the noise in the background. I hope that you will be able to hear me okay, and that it won't cause too much of a distraction. I thank you for your patience and your flexibility. I had a bit of a panic, and I had to punch to try and find a spot where I could get on to be able uh, to conduct today's presentation. So thank you very much for your patience. I am a senior writing coach with Defend, Publish, and Lead, and I've been working with them for several years. My day job is as a professor at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, where I have the opportunity to work with faculty and graduate students and undergraduates across all kinds of issues related to writing. So I'm pleased to talk to you today about helping to manage your email for scholarly productivity. And as noted, this is an issue that we certainly all face. Before I move forward too much, I'll just talk for 1 second about the Defend, Publish, and Lead organization through which I'm presenting today. Defend, Publish, and Lead offers support for scholars at across levels in achieving their sought research writing objectives and helping to manage their responsibilities to succeed as faculty and as scholarly writers. They do that through workshops and presentations like the one that I'm giving to you today. They also do that through individualized consulting, where you can meet with consultants and they can offer support, guidance, feedback, advice to help you on your individualized writing tasks. So if you are interested in that, I'll have contact information up later if you are perhaps wanting to schedule a consultation or want to learn more. All right, so my agenda for today is to talk a little bit about the exigence for this topic, why the issue of email overload is a problem for us. And then I'm going to talk about two kind of umbrella approaches for addressing and dealing with email overload, the 4D approach, and then a set of approaches from Letmaeve and Knoll. Then I'll break down more particularly to talk about time management strategies related to email, to organizational strategies, and then writing strategies. I'll talk for a minute about AI and the role that AI might or might not play in helping with email management, and then we'll do a brief little exercise about next steps, and then I'll open things up for Q&A. But as Nancy mentioned, please feel free to post questions in the chat, and we will address those as necessary along the way, and then certainly at the end. All right, so why is email overload an issue for us? It manifests, I think, in a number of different ways. It affects our mental health. When we are overloaded by our email, that can make us stressed, anxious, overwhelmed, and frustrated. But it also affects our work productivity. It can lead to inefficiency in accomplishing things that we need to, and just wasted time. Trying to find an email, trying to respond to a message that you saw that you can't find. A lack of focus, kind of moving back and forth between something that you're trying to write and addressing an email and shuttling between those. And then just a sense of distraction, which can also contribute to less of a sense of work fulfillment. A lack of personal connection, difficulty achieving goals because you feel like you're just spending too much time on your email. A sense of busy work, right? Email is part of our jobs, but it's not the reason that we became faculty members, that we became professionals in academia. And it's a task that isn't really explicitly rewarded, of course, right? It doesn't count in a meaningful way toward promotion, tenure, towards achieving goals. And so it can be frustrating when we feel like we have to spend so much time on that. The digital landscape has left us with too much information. in a sense, as you are likely very familiar since the advent of the internet. We have been awash in information. I like that notion by Markman that we are just surrounded by text and information now, kind of all the time. And just one way to kind of quantify that, it would take over 250 hours to read in full all of the terms of service agreements for the digital services and apps that we use. So everything that is part of our digital landscape, we would have to set aside that much time if we actually read everything, which of course is not possible. So I just want to ask how much time you think you spend each day on emailing. If you were to quantify it, how much time would you say that you spend each day on emailing? If you want to shout it out, if you want to post your estimate in the chat.
I feel like I'm always sort of low grade on email, like it's always simmering somewhere in my mind.
I think you're far from alone on that. If that was Woody? Yeah, I think we have some posts coming in the chat. Thank you very much to those of you who are posting. We have estimates from 3 to 4 hours, 2 to 4 hours. Not enough time, it gets overwhelming. 3 to 4 hours. So we're getting a sense of that as a ballpark. Always simmering. Well, let's see what some studies have shown us about this to get a sense of how this is indeed an issue. So in 2019, a study reported by Plummer said that the average employee spent over 1/4 of their workday reading and writing email. That's 2.5 hours. So that's even a little lower than folks that you're finding in your experiences. That same year, Adobe did a similar study, and they included personal email time and found that it's 5 hours a day that folks reported that they were on email between work, between personal time. Needless to say, that is a significant chunk of the time that we have each day. A more recent study in 2025 found that the average office worker now receives 121 emails and sends about 40 emails each day for business purposes. So that might resonate with you in terms of your experience. It is significant. So all of this together, 20% of each week is devoted to emailing. So 1/5 of our work time is emailing. And so we need ways to help make this more manageable and doable. While email is a significant way that we communicate with others, it can move from being a aid to productivity to a distraction. Excuse me, only 30% of the emails that we receive, according to the study from Cloud HQ, need immediate attention. So 70% of them are things that don't need to be attended to immediately. But an interesting part of this study as well is that 32% of emails may go unread by their audience because of the volume of email that we receive. And so 1/3 of the emails might not even get to be read. They also reported that employees check emails between 11 and 36 times an hour, and that 84% keep their email open all day. And that connects with several of you who said it feels like it's simmering all the time. It's always there. And certainly one way that manifests is through keeping email open all day. And then also that about 1/3 of folks said that they rely a lot on email notifications, that they have that built in that lets them know when they get new emails. And so that helps them attend to their needs. So what do we do? How are some ways that we can make this not so overwhelming? I don't have magic wands, but there are some ways that you can help to make it feel like it's not taking over your life. I want to start by talking about the 4D approach to email management. I'm talking about this as reported by a group called the Compliance Prime Team, but if you search it up, you'll probably see it in other places as well. And this is to approach email by categorize it into 4 groups, all of which start with D. And the idea behind this is that you decide when you open an email, when you receive an email, to either delete it, delegate it, defer it, or do it, as in respond to it, act on it right away. And the idea behind this approach is that you consider this in terms of like your gut reaction, your initial reaction. It doesn't help you save time or feel less overwhelmed if you spend 20 minutes determining whether an email should fall into one of these 4 categories, right? And so the idea is you make a decision rather quickly about, is this an email that I even need to keep? Or is this something that I can delete? Is this an email that I can send to someone else to manage or take care of? That doesn't always happen so much in academic roles, but if you have a research assistant, for example, or if you have a TA that's working with you, or someone else in your department that you can direct that email to, you can get it off of your plate and onto the more appropriate person to be able to respond to. The third D is to defer. And to defer is something that you know that you will have to address, but you're not able to address right away. And so you can determine, I can respond to this email at another time. And I'll talk a little bit later about some ways you can help to manage that. And then the fourth is something that you have to respond to as soon as you read it right away. This is an email that you are able to attend to. Keeping in mind the statistics that I just reviewed that says kind of 1/3 of emails are ones that we need to respond to. If you can break that down further between the defer and the do, that might even bring that percentage down a little bit lower. So when you get an email, decide, can I delete it? Can I delegate it to someone else? Can I defer it to address later? Or is this something I really have to address right now? So read with that lens in mind. Let Nathan Noel do this kind of widespread look at all kinds of studies that are on approaches to email management. And they synthesize them and they make suggestions based on the efficacy of those strategies and which seem to be most effective and which are perhaps less effective. And there are 5 categories of those studies that I'm gonna talk about that they have as their umbrella categories. The first one is a zero inbox strategy. And the strategy here is to keep as few messages in your inbox as possible. You might use those 4 Ds to help you do that. But the idea is when you open your email, you don't have hundreds and thousands of messages waiting for you, which visually can be overwhelming, just cognitively or emotionally overwhelming. And so try and keep your inbox at 0. The second strategy that they pull from the studies that they synthesize is using email as a to-do list so that messages are a reminder of your action items. So that when you open your email, it's organized in such a way that what you see is a to-do list for the day or for the week. And so it can help you manage your responsibilities and the things that you need to take care of. Those 2 items are bolded because those are the 2 that, based on their look at and reading of those studies, they found to be folks reported as most effective in helping them feel less overwhelmed by their email. Trying to keep a 0 inbox or using it as a to-do list. 3 others that they mention as reported in the literature are what they call the alertness strategy, a strategy where you keep your email open to respond quickly to things that come in. So your email is open all day, you get a notification, and you take care of it immediately if it is something that needs to be taken care of. And so it's off of your plate right away. The downside with that, of course, that folks reported is the sense of distraction. They pivot from what they're working on to address the email. It gets it off of their plate, but it also interrupts their flow of work with whatever that they're working on. 2 other strategies that they identified were a prioritization, which is determining response necessity. So this is in connection a little bit with that defer strategy that I mentioned as part of the 4D, where you figure out, is this something that I need to attend to today, this week, next week, or later at another time? In some email programs, you can use a pin to top feature to help you position a message so that you see it and you can set when you need to respond. And then the final strategy is using folders to help organize your messages in a way so that you can perhaps find them more easily, or you can group like messages together so that they're not all in your inbox. There are ways to do this automatically so that, for example, from particular senders, emails might be directed to a folder automatically. It just goes directly there. It doesn't even go to your inbox. Or users would do this manually, where it would come to their inbox and then they would move it to a particular folder that they would set up, create, or that they already had based on the different aspects of their work that they might have. Those folders folks would name them perhaps around particular projects that they would working on, or within academic spheres have a teaching umbrella folder with subfolders, a research umbrella folder with subfolders, a service umbrella folder with subfolders, or maybe named by projects, but that folks had a system set up so that all messages just didn't live forever within their inbox. So in terms of those as overall strategies, we can drill down a little bit further to think about how you can manage time when you're doing email based on that kind of work, but also based off of other experiences that folks have found fruitful when they're trying not to have email be so overwhelming in their lives. And the first one of those is don't drop everything when a new message arrives. This is a little bit in counterpoint to that alertness strategy that that was reported from the studies that Letman then maybe talked about, but it helps to avoid distraction so that you're not, something comes in and you have to interrupt your train of thought to address it. You can stay in your lane and address your email when you are ready to do that. So don't feel like just because you get a new email that automatically has to become the top priority for the things that you're working on. Alongside that is closing your email when you're doing a scholarly research writing task to help you focus. When I do writing groups for faculty, one of the first things that I direct them to do when we are working is everybody close your email. Treat this as something that requires your full and undivided attention so that you don't have to have that constant distraction built in, that ding that goes off, or the sense that something comes up that requires your attention. Another way to kind of balance these is to turn off email notifications to avoid distraction. So you might have your email open, for example, during the day, but rather than getting a push notice that you've received a new email, it waits for you to go to it when you're ready and when you have time. So it doesn't pop up, you don't get that ding, the noise, or however your notifications are set up. So you have to make the decision and the effort to go into your email rather than to have it just open and kind of giving you that barrage.
Okay.
Another thing that you can do is to unsubscribe from mailing lists and social media push notifications that come into your inbox. We all get sometimes connected with these when we use a particular app, when we're on particular social media, even like LinkedIn, if you're on that for professional purposes. When you use it, it automatically signs you up for its newsletter. And so you get all kinds of emails from them. This is the case for a lot of other services. It may even be the case for other programs that you use as part of your position. For example, maybe even Zoom or Grammarly. Also, when you initially use them, by default, get signed up for their newsletter. And so one way to help cut down on some of that email is to unsubscribe from those. Unfortunately, by default, you get signed up in almost all cases, so you have to make the effort to unsubscribe, but it can reduce the volume of email that you receive when you don't have those kind of things from mailing lists or those services flooding into your inbox. And it can help make the emails that you receive be ones that are more pertinent to the work that you do rather than the kind of email slop that can come in. These two, I think, I would name as two of the most impactful time management strategies that you can use to help you with your email. And the first is to schedule email time during your day. Rather than have your email open all day, to schedule when you are going to be looking at your email and have it open during that time and have it closed at other times. So this might be in the morning, you're going to spend half an hour addressing your emails before you launch into your day. If you feel like worried, oh, did I get something that might pertain to today? I want to get this done before I move on to my other things. That might be a time of day that works well for you. If you want to take care of some things before you finish up for the day and see and you work through your email that way, you might schedule at the end of the day or lunchtime or whatever makes the most sense on your calendar. But actually kind of have a block on your calendar. This is my email response time, and I'm not going to address my email at other times during the day. You might do it one of these times, or you might do like a beginning and end of day. Whatever, you can play with the schedule that makes the most sense for you and is most efficacious. But it allows you to recognize it's something that you have to attend to, but it's not always simmering in the background. And then you can also take advantage of flagging to help you prioritize your messages and set up when they are due. This is in relation to some of the other strategies that I mentioned, where your email helps you to manage your to-do list, or you can defer when particular emails are going to be attended to. Different email programs do this differently, and my understanding is that you all might have a whole variety of programs that you use. So rather than walk through one particular platform, there's a screen capture here from Outlook to show you kind of what that looks like. But all programs have this in one form or another, where you can flag a message as something that you know you need to respond to, and you can indicate when you want to respond to it. Is it a message that needs a response today or tomorrow, this week, next week, whenever? And you can also set up a reminder for yourself when to say like, hey, this is due, I need to attend to it. But it's a way so that when you look at your inbox, it's organized around, okay, these are the things I need to do and when, so that you're not like scrolling through to see, wait, I had this message I had to respond to. I remember reading this and I can't find it, but it helps make that a little easier for yourself.
Yeah, good.
To talk a little bit more about email organization, I'm going to share some particular strategies related to that also. In terms of if you decide that the folder use strategy is one that might make sense for you, using nested folders can be one way to help with that, so that you try and put things that are related together in your inbox so you can find them more easily. You can, as you can with other word processing documents, do a search for an email message. But if your experience is like mine, that can be frustrating, time consuming, and not always get to the email that you want. But if you put everything together in one folder where, just to use the screen capture here, everything related to the AI and WP edit volume project is going to go in that folder. And so I know if I'm looking for something related to that project, that's where I'm going to put it, and that's where I'm going to go to look for it. And so I don't have to search and try and find it. I also highly recommend separating your professional and personal email accounts so that those are not crossing over and adding to your sense of being overwhelmed with your email, to have them at completely separate addresses. There are folks who might say like they direct all of their emails to one Google account and say they don't like going to different platforms. I find that overwhelming with everything in one space, and I suggest it might be easier to move your professional and personal ones in different spaces so that an email about next weekend's barbecue is not having the same level of visibility as your need to edit the proofs for an article that's going to come out by next Friday. You can automatically move messages to certain folders to help you direct them to the place where they need to go without you having to take time to do that manually. Again, different programs do that differently, but they all have this feature where if it comes from a particular sender, for example, or has a particular subject line, you can have it move to a particular folder. You can also schedule when to send messages so that they are more likely to reach folks at the point of need. This can also help you recognize when folks might be more likely to respond to a message or see it so that they're not getting it at 10 p.m. in the evening. But to set some boundaries around. So if you say, for example, you schedule your writing time for between 7 and 7:30 in the morning, and you go through and you do your response messages, you can schedule when folks will get those, when your email program will send those out. So if you know, like, I want someone to get this at 10 a.m., or I want someone to get this at 5, or I want someone to get this tomorrow morning, you can set that up when you do your messages. You don't have to have them all go out at that particular time.
So,
Now that I've talked a little bit about some time management strategies associated with email and some organizational strategies associated with email, I also want to touch on some writing strategies associated with email so that when you are writing messages, you can do so in a way that is also least likely to lead to a feeling of frustration or being overwhelmed. One of those is to use specific substantive subject lines. When you title a message, do so in a way that will facilitate you finding it later and will facilitate a person reading it knowing what it is and if they're going to need to respond. You're probably very used to getting emails that might have important in all capital letters as the subject line or needs response, which is not terribly helpful. So I just, a particular way where I try and do this in my own practices, if I am sending an email related to my work in the Writing Center, I start the subject line with Writing Center, colon, and then more particularly what it is. So not only can I find it more easily, but folks getting it also know this is something related to the Writing Center. Avoid words and punctuation in your subject lines that are likely to signal spam and route it to a junk folder so that you've spent all this time working on a message and it doesn't even reach your audience. So for example, exclamation points and question marks tend to be marked as spam and are more likely to make a message routed to the junk mail folder. All capital letters are more likely to be routed to a spam folder. Or urgent, important, even though messages may indeed be that, are also more likely to be shunted into, perhaps ironically, a spam folder. And so think about how you can use words in your subject line that aren't going to prevent your reader from even getting it in the first place. Yeah. In emails, be brief, avoid long paragraphs. As academics, we are used to writing in forms that are sometimes a long form where it takes a lot of space to explain something carefully and fully. Email is not a place to do that. Email is a place for bulleted lists, for one-sentence paragraphs, ways to make them very scannable so that when your reader gets a message, they can get the information they need quickly. And think about this from your own experience as a reader. When you get a message, if you're able to scan it quickly and get what you need out of it, you don't have to invest the heavy writing time. When you see an email message where you have to scroll down and down, that may make you more likely to read it at that moment, but also you know it's something that's going to take more time. Try and focus your email messages on one subject so that it can facilitate your organization of them in folders, if that's something that you choose to do, but also to help keep your thoughts centered and focused around a particular issue. Now, of course, the balance here is you don't want to have to send someone 4 separate emails if these are all going to the same person, if you could address them in one message. And so I recognize you have to make some decisions about this, but it's helpful in processing a message or in preparing a message for an audience if you can make it about one thing rather than 2 or 3 different things so that when they get it, they know how to directed and respond to. Because if they perhaps address one aspect of it and they forget the other aspects or not get to them at that moment, and then you have to send a follow-up message to remind them. It's good not to yell in messages. Using all capital letters, both bold and underlined, may be a way to communicate that something is urgent, but they're pretty off-putting for a reader because it seems like you're yelling at them. So one way to help communicate that something is important is in some email programs, you can mark it as a high priority message to let someone know that it's high priority, or just indicate very clearly in an opening sentence or phrase that it requires quick response or whatever it might be. Use blind carbon copy feature on emails with care so that you are upfront about who is getting it. What this can sometimes happen is result in folks getting the same email multiple times if a recipient doesn't know that they already received it. So if a message is being sent to copy to a supervisor or to someone who is assisting or attending the meeting, and if all those attendees end up in the blind carbon copy, the recipient might not know that that person also got that message, and so they might forward it to them. And now they've gotten two messages from the same thing. So it's good to be upfront about who's going to get it. Now, I realize, again, there are sometimes folks who don't want their email shared, or students who might have FERPA regulations or things around like sharing their email addresses. But in general, the practice is better to be upfront about who gets it so that you don't have to get the same message 3 times. It can also be helpful to have templates for frequent messages that you send. If there's a type of email that you have to respond to a good bit, to have a template set up so you can copy and paste it into a message without you having to rewrite it all the time. If you are, for example, doing hiring and you have a response that you're giving to applicants, if you can have a template already made where you can just slot that in, you don't have to rewrite that message all the time. Or if there's an email where you let students know about the due date of something or a grade, or you're emailing students who have been absent or something. If you have one templated message that you can work from and then use multiple times, it saves you from having to rewrite. As an administrator on my campus, I have found this super helpful. I know, for example, like if someone, I direct a writing center at my campus, if a student has missed an appointment, I know I have the email. If they email and say, oh, I missed my appointment, can I blah, blah, blah. I have the template ready to go out. I don't have to rewrite that every time. Reply all on messages with care. Consider if all of the recipients who were copied on that message need to know, or just the person who sent it to you. And a perhaps humorous example of this is you're having a faculty meeting coming up and they're going to be serving lunch, and the administrative assistant needs to know your lunch order. Everyone on the message does not need to know that you want, or someone wants ham and Swiss for their sandwich, right? You don't want to get 40 email messages with everyone's lunch order. And so as someone who sends a message, it's very helpful to remind folks, please only respond to me, or everyone, copied on this message doesn't need your response. I need it. They can also cut down on all that email traffic back and forth when something that you don't need to read but fills up your inbox or may be result in notification. Reference or include previous messages when you're responding to a message. That way your audience will know the context of the message that's coming in, and they can find it more easily. And that's easier for you when you get a message, so that you don't have to think like, wait, what was this about? And then go back and search. But if you can just scroll down and see, okay, here was the previous message, that can be helpful. Because email has personal and professional uses, it's important to maintain an appropriate tone, and to sort of be clear about like what's the outcome that needs to come from this message, so that you can direct folks to what they need to do and what you need from them from the messages that you send them. So there doesn't need to be a follow-up message for clarification. Recognize permanence and lack of privacy for email. As you probably know, they live forever. So don't put anything in a message that you don't want written on your tombstone or that you wouldn't want to be part of your tenure file. Because they have a way of popping up. You've probably seen it in the news with political figures, right? They can go back and find an email from 2008 that they wrote about something, even though they deleted it or thought they got rid of it. So make sure that anything that you're committing to an email message you recognize is going to live there forever. Save messages as you are drafting them. There's nothing more frustrating than in the middle of a message that you've spent time carefully composing and something happens and you lose it. So build into your practice saving your emails as drafts as you are writing them, so that if something does happen, you're not losing the whole thing. So automatically just have it saved into your drafts folder, not to lose that. And then finally, include your contact information in your message so that someone can respond to you and not have to email you to ask you for your contact information as an additional step. This may seem unnecessary or obvious if they, well, couldn't they just reply to my message? Maybe, but if you are using a program that uses something like MailTips or converts email addresses to names, sometimes like with a response message, it loses the address and just gives them the name, and so then they can't find you. And so even in an email, it's helpful to have as part of a signature or as part of a closing line how you want someone on an actionable item to respond to you. All right, AI. Can AI help at all? Well, you've probably seen some headlines in related to email management. Oops, sorry. To email management and AI. AI can't plan your whole day, not yet, but we found one app that gets close. Perplexity offers an email agent that will streamline your email for $200 a month. Everyday tools that are already getting built into email. This is, kind of become an industry of its own within artificial intelligence. And one of those programs called Superhuman, Newsweek did a whole little profile on it to say folks were responding to emails a little over 3.5 hours faster and sending 60% more emails. More emails might not be good, but it did help them get to this zero inbox strategy that I mentioned. And so this seems like a perfect solution, right? Why don't we just get email AI to handle our email? Well, there are programs now that will compose emails and read them. And you've probably heard of some of the ones that are listed here. These come in a variety of flavors. A lot of them are geared towards marketing and their speech to text options. But before we identify this as the magic solution to email overload, there are reasons to be cautious. There are privacy concerns with these programs having access to your email and to the content of your messages. And what happens to those from those third-party vendors is not really clear. So you're at risk of divulging information that shouldn't be publicly circulated. As with lots of AI, there are content and grammatical errors that they sometimes present when they compose messages or if they summarize messages for you. So they're not automatically the time saver in the way that they advertise, because you still have to do your due diligence to double check that you don't have mistakes and that the content of the summary actually messages the content of the message. These can be quite pricey. That Perplexity example that I pointed to there is $200 a month, but they can go up from there. I don't know if Texas Tech has regulations regarding artificial intelligence use at all for messages or things, but universities are starting to get these into place. So it's important to know whether your university has a position or not. And on the back end, they can actually increase the spam that gets circulated rather than cutting it down. And of course, what does it mean to be discoursing and communicating with people without personal connection in a form of response that already can seem kind of depersonalized. So I'm cautious about saying outsourcing our email overload problems to artificial intelligence is the answer. There may be ways it gets built in future. But I think we need to move forward carefully, thinking about it. So before I open things up to question and answer and whatever might be in the chat, I just want to ask you to, for a moment, think about next steps for yourself. And two of these I'm going to ask you to share, a few of you to volunteer to share. The first one is to document how much time you spend emailing in a day, to actually, for yourself, pay attention to this mindfully. This will take a little bit of time out of your workday to kind of keep track of this, but I think it lets you know kind of the baseline of where you're starting. Like, what really is the amount of time that you are devoting to your email? Is it a lot more than you think? Is it less than you think? What is it? The second thing is to begin to strategize. And one way to do that is think about, are there two approaches that I talked about today that you could use starting tomorrow to help you manage your email? And the third thing is to think about, if you were to schedule your email time, get on your calendar when that is and when your email free time is going to be. So if I could ask you to take just a couple minutes right now to do that. Obviously, you're not going to document your email time right now, but for the second two, strategize and schedule. Select two approaches that you think, yeah, that might be helpful. That's something I want to try. And if you were to schedule your email time, when would it be? I'll pause for a moment and I'll give you a reprieve from the background noise here and some quiet to do that. And then I'll ask a few of you to share that with us.
All right.
So that we have lots of time for questions, if I could ask a few of you if you'd be willing to share an approach that you found helpful, or even something that we didn't talk about from your own experience that you found helpful, we can add it to the list to help folks. And or when you might be interested in scheduling your devoted email time. You can post in the chat or just shout it out.
Jackie has a great post in the chat. Jackie, are you able to unmute and speak to this? If not, let me know and I'll
I am. I'm totally just in Shonda's office. Yes, this is one of my favorite authors. Her name's Laura Vanderkam, and she talks about kind of, I think, what you were describing, which was batching email. And when I first heard that, that was revolutionary to me. I try really hard not to look at email before I start my morning writing time, but inevitably there's a little fire in there somewhere and it's hard. So I will kind of do that to clear my mind. And then I really hate going into the evening with a cluttered inbox. So I'll try to make a big push at the end of the day. That doesn't mean I'm good about not checking email. Shonda's smiling at me during the day, but really like her book.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jackie. I appreciate you posting that. And that's a great way to keep it from interrupting you all day, right? You just get it in a push at one time.
Thanks, Dr. Purdy. I think what I've got to think about is that I use my email for a catch-all for other modes of communication. So if a RingCentral message comes through, it goes to my email. So wherever I am, I know if I can access my email, if an emergency comes up or something that feels like an emergency to someone else, I can see that and respond to it. So I really have to think about that. And but I do like the zero inbox way. That's what I usually practice until the last couple of months. It got out of hand.
Thanks for sharing that with me. I did open up the chat and I see one there. Did you want to take that, Nancy, or do you want me to?
It's a good question that I also have, that it's hard to schedule time for emails because, for instance, David, who's a chair, has to be pretty responsive because emergencies happen. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, that's such a great question and an important point. And so one way to handle that potentially is to have like an automatic message that goes back during a particular time of the day that says, if this is an emergency, and provide them another way to get in touch with you. Now, the trade-off there is you have to provide another way that they can reach you, whether that would be calling or texting or whatever you're comfortable with. But it does let you still try and set aside that time, but also recognize that there might be emergencies given your position. But maybe also to ask the person to think like, is this an emergency? Does this actually require an immediate response? But that's one thing you can try is just say like, between 10 and 12, I am off email. I'm going to have a response that says, I'm not manning my email right now, but if you need to get in touch with me for some reason, please do this other way.
Stephanie has a great, let's see, a great comment in the chat about working on cleaning everything out, disabling all the bells and whistles, and working towards zero email, but there are so many to clean up, thousands. I'll say one thing, and then maybe Jim, you have other strategies. When I get to that point, I create a folder for emails during that time, and I move all of those into that time rather than trying to sort through hundreds or thousands of emails. So you still have them, but they're no longer in your inbox. Jim, any other thoughts on that?
I echo that strategy, Nancy. You need to start with a clean slate. And so you don't want to delete everything, but just say like, my October emails, I'm putting them all in here. And now I'm starting with a zero inbox. Because if you try and do it the other way, you likely have to spend a lot of time putting it where it needs to go in the folder and everything. So just say, moving forward, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to start with my zero inbox, and I'm going to maintain it. You try and maintain it from there. Another way to help a little bit with that, to help achieve the zero inbox, is that automatic funneling strategy that I talked about. So like if there's a message that you get from someone or from some domain or on some topic where you can just get it automatically to go into a particular folder, then that can also help a little bit with that. You can set up those rules to move things out of your inbox a little bit more.
I really like this. So for all of you on the call who are chairs or ACAs or someone else with some authority, declaring an email moratorium or talking with folks about what's for email and what's not for email, you could make some real changes for your colleagues. And you'll see Jackie has thought about just one day a month, no email that day. So there's email peace for that day. Just little things like that. I'll say just briefly, when I worked at an institution some years ago, we were hit with ransomware. We got hit with ransomware, and we were without email, internet, anything other than phones and talking to someone in person for 9 glorious days. We got so much work done. I felt for our IT department, but it was glorious. Then they paid $17,000 and got everything back. But just that little email piece is helpful.
Yes, we can't pray for email outages, but it is useful to kind of department meeting or in an early semester message to kind of note like, these are the things that are good to use email for. Here are other ways to communicate, this other kinds of information. And so providing some guidance about that. Also with your students, if you're teaching, to kind of let them know, like, this is the type of thing to please email me for. You don't have to email me for other things. To give them a little bit of guidance. If you tend to get a lot of emails that way. Yeah, I see the message. Yeah, yeah. TWU not sending an announcement every time. Yeah, sometimes these decisions are above our heads, and we get a lot of emails spam. I will say one thing that the provost office did at my institution is they made it so that organizations and centers can no longer send emails to all faculty, and they group them all into something that they send out every Monday that folks get. Now, this has helped cut down the individual emails that we receive. The trade-off has been the visibility of those messages is virtually lost now because folks don't read this gigantic missive that comes out once a week. And so, there we need to think about maybe places in the middle there, but discussions about when email is appropriate and not are very appreciated, and that's an excellent, excellent suggestion. Anyone else want to share a strategy that you use or that you think you might use based on today, or just have another question or issue that you wanted to bring up for this?
It sounds like that may be it. Yeah. So, okay, Jim, any last comments, advice, challenges, blessings?
Certainly all those things, but I think if you are at a moment where you feel particularly frustrated and overwhelmed, I really think that what Nancy mentioned about start from scratch can be really helpful to give yourself a fresh way to move forward. And so, give yourself a chance to try that zero inbox strategy. Give yourself a chance to try using this to prioritize your inboxes without having the baggage of everything else. There may obviously be things you have to attend to from that, but use it as a way to kind of take control over your own time and not to let it take time away from you. While it is difficult to feel like, oh, what if it is an emergency and someone needs to get in touch with me? If it is, they will find another way to reach you. It's okay not to respond to an email right away. And you might even let folks know, like in your response, it may take 48 hours or however many hours to respond. And Nancy, you have something great in your message as a reminder to people about, you don't have to respond to this right away. Please make the choices that are good for you. Those mindfulness moments are really marvelous.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
put that in the chat. If you've never gotten an email from me, not that you need more emails, but I'll put in the chat something I have in my signature on all of my emails. Whoops, let's see. There we go. So I just put it in the chat. And I've seen plenty of things like this, but again, just that idea of giving people permission not to have to treat email like that. I want to thank everyone for coming this afternoon, for sharing some good advice, and especially to Jim for giving us some great strategies, especially when the internet went out at his university and his home, and he ran to a coffee shop to be here on time. So thank you, everyone, and dare I say, I'll see you on email. Bye. I'll hang out if anybody has a question. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.